Hey, thank you everybody for joining us. Wrestling Travel presents the Lockdown Sessions. Today, it is awesome. We've got Erick with us today, Erick Redbeard. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
What a huge introduction I have right there, huh? Fantastic.
That's great.
So, Erick, as you know, and I didn't even tell you, Wrestling Travel, we are a company out of the United Kingdom that takes fans from all over the world to their favorite wrestling events. That obviously has slowed down quite a bit during the pandemic. So we started doing some interviews, trying to catch up with guys and girls and seeing how they're doing during the lockdown, and hopefully helping some of the indie guys get their name out there and sell some merch. But we're very happy that you joined us. I want to start at the beginning with you if I can. And a lot of people are going to think I'm going to start with, hey, when did you start training? You played football at the University of Minnesota Morris, if my journalistic integrity is holding up. Is that correct?
That is correct.
What position did you play?
I was defensive tackle. I was D-end in high school, and they slowed down a little bit for college, but I wanted to start somewhere. And I actually didn't start lifting weights until like my junior year of high school. So I was kind of like a guy who showed up the senior year and, started getting attention from scouts, but like a little too late. So I was like, my whole thought was like, okay, well, my next goal is to play college football. And there was only like a D1 AA school that was interested, and there was a lot of D2 interest. So I ended up going to Morris because I had a good college education there. Moved me from DN to D tackle. I think I was like 275 when I got there, and I did good. I started. The team was really bad, but I had a good experience there in my first year, and then I gained a lot of weight, like lifting, but not a lot of nutrition, and ballooned up to about 315 over the course of the next year. And I got a really bad respiratory virus called RSV. And it's something that is mostly in, infants. And it took a long time for them to diagnose me with it. So I went most of the year not playing my sophomore year. And my grades were taking a hit because I was always going to the doctors. I think they switched me to offensive line for like to start in one game. And I kind of knew that I needed to get out, but they wouldn't release me from my scholarship. So I had to like have meetings with the NCAA to get released. But during that time, I started watching wrestling, and I started to get a love for wrestling, watching a lot of it on television. I ended up going to a couple shows, one of which was an Eddie Sharkey show. And I kind of switched my gear from the football college dream to, Mom, I'm going to quit college and I'm going to train to be a professional wrestler, which she was not too happy about.
My mom either. I showed my mom a videotape. That's how I let her know. She did not talk to me for like 3 days.
I made a little deal. Yeah.
Yeah. My dad was all excited, but
I made a deal with her. I said, I'll train to be the wrestler, but I'm going to have to go to a little bit of school. So I went to a community college while I was working full-time at a gentleman's club and training to be a wrestler. As you can imagine, that is a lot of stuff to do at once. So I lasted a semester there. I got decent grades. I passed everything. And then just concentrated 100% on wrestling.
So you started is it around 2002, 2003 that you start training?
2002 I started training, and then September of 2003 was my first match. It was against a fellow trainee named the Schoolboy, who literally was a kid that was a schoolboy gimmick. And his finish was the Schoolboy. But I went over my first match. I don't have to worry about that. And then my second match ever was against Ken Anderson.
Okay.
So you always remember your first and second matches. So those were the first two. And, from that moment, I kind of had this love for being in front of a crowd.
I think I've seen the schoolboy within the last couple of years wrestle in northern Wisconsin, and he had heat. I'll tell you that. So whether it's the same guy or not, but I was like, what is this gimmick? So, how did that? So did you go to a show, and then did you meet Eddie at a show and start talking about training?
So I went to a wrestling show. It was a Buck Sumoff show. And he obviously has a bad rep right now, rightfully so. He's in prison rotting for some bad things he did. But my first show I ever attended was like 20 minutes from my college. And me and my buddy went. We were already like fooling around in the wrestling room of the college, taking back bumps, like just messing around. So we were both really big wrestling fans. He'd always get the pay-per-views every month. So we'd have like a party over at his house during, once a month for college. And so we went to the show and basically said, yeah, anybody wants to get in the ring? I signed this little thing, and you pay $20 and you go in the ring. We'll do commentary on it. You get it on tape. So somewhere out there is a three-way match between me, his brother, my friend's brother, and my other friend in a steel cage of some VFW in the middle of nowhere, Minnesota, with obviously Buck on commentary. That was probably a huge liability. I probably could have broke my neck. But after we went to that one, we didn't know quite what to think. It was a weird show. If you ever been to a Buck Sumoff show, like some people are good trained, but the ring's not adequate for anything kind of wrestling. It's kind of like a touring carnival basically. So we had said, okay, let's try a different show. This show's got some names. I think Jerry Lynn had just become the cruiserweight champion of the WWF at the time, and he was going to be wrestling a guy who ended up being Bam Neely later, Magnus Maximus. And so we were like, oh, there's some names on the show. I think Lane was wrestling on that show. So like we're like, oh, this one's got some names we've seen on some of the shows we've been watching. So let's go and check it out. So we went. I paid my money like the good mark I was, and I got my picture with Jerry. And I talked to like Robbie Thunder was there, Brody Hoofer, a lot of Minnesota names, Mitch Paradise. And I was like, oh, these guys are really, it's just like you see on television. It's crazy. And these fans are really into it. And I was like, I really want to do this. So I talked to him a little bit about training. I ended up going to MPW at first and had my first match with them in September. But then before 2004, I got back in contact with Terry and Eddie. And while I was already working on the indies, I went back and trained with him as well. We're kind of, trained myself different, either good or bad habits. But it was still a great experience, and I wouldn't have came up that way any other way. And especially going from there to working and kind of feeling stuck in a certain spot to going to Japan for a tour and training with them, to going back home, taking care of my son by myself, to kind of coming to realization that, hey, I'm just doing this for fun. I'm not trying to make it because I got a son I got to take care of. And then getting an opportunity by chance to fly out to Florida and get signed. So it's kind of from 2003 to 2000, I got signed in 2011. I think 2010 was my tryout, but like I busted my ass from the day I started to the day I got up. And then once you got up there, you still have to bust your ass. And even when you get on the road, you bust your ass to prove people wrong, and get respect even within the people in the company.
Right. Did you ever wrestle on a show with Jamie Magnan, the Hater, at all? Minnesota guy?
The Hater.
That's how I met Eddie. We were at a show.
Oh, okay.
The Hater is the heavyweight champion, and he hands me and another linebacker on our team his belt, his jacket. He wins the match. He goes to the locker room. We're waiting 20 minutes. We've got this, I don't know if it was Pro Wrestling America, whatever. We've got the championship belt. And we're waiting around, and finally we start to leave, and I go, we can't take this belt. We gotta. And that's how we met Eddie and gave the hater his stuff back. Wayne Bloom was there when we asked Eddie about training, and Wayne Bloom, in all of his infinite knowledge, said, why the F would you ever want to do this? Get the F out of here. You don't want any part in this. And the rest was history. So, but now, did you grow up, besides like when you were in college, did you grow up as a young Erick Redbeard watching like pro wrestling when you were a kid?
I mean, I had a really good baby face. I don't think I had a good beard till like I was well out of college. But yes. When I was little, I remember my dad going to my uncle's house, and Dad watched the closed circuit, pay-per-views, back before pay-per-views, I guess. And they would buy the kids' toys. And I remember playing with my cousins, but I don't remember watching it, because when you're a kid, you don't really sit down and watch stuff. You're always out running around. And so I remember like having like wrestling themed like parties. I remember my parents telling me I went to like a show. I'm not gonna lie and say I remember being in the front row and cheering. Here's a video of me, from this live event. I don't know how people even uncover that footage. I think, what was it, Zack Ryder would point out like, oh, I was in the crowd right there. So that wasn't me. The first live WWE show I ever went to, outside of when I was like probably like 3 years old or 4 years old, was being in the ring.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So
I was hoping to get into some AWA talk, because that's all I remember growing up on. We had 3 channels, and AWA was always on. Everybody always asked me who's my favorite, and I'm not ashamed to say it was Greg Gagne growing up. So I didn't know if you had a similar, being in Minnesota. AWA.
I really thought you were going to say Baron von Raschke.
Oh, let me tell you though, last fall, Great Lakes Championship Wrestling brought Baron von Raschke over to a show, and I went. 79 years old. The guy looks like he could still go today. And I'm like, I had his autograph when I was a little kid, and I'm like, I had to go over there and at least shake his hand, and I got my picture taken with him, and what a guy.
I remember I did a show for Eddie and Terry, and I just remember it because it's like some pictures stand out, and you'd have to really search to find the picture somewhere, but it was me and my manager, Sheik Adnan, who I used to travel with a little bit, and I love Adnan, and but it would be me and him versus Brody Hofer and Baron von Raschke. And von Raschke, towards the end of the match, I was such a good heel at the time. He gave me that iron claw. Smells of a little bit of booze, but he applied it gratingly, So
that's outstanding. Yeah.
But there was a great picture of the 4 of us all staring off in the ring. I was like, oh, that's Adnan and von Raschke. That's pretty cool. You think about just little things like that where you're like, that's a cool moment.
That's awesome. I talked to Nikita Koloff about a month ago and just said, hey, you were in the ring. It was 1985. I was doing my research, and I was on YouTube. And 1985 Comiskey Park, Nikita, Ivan Koloff, Barry Darsow as Crusher Khrushchev. And I go, you're in the ring with Von Raschke, Dick the Bruiser, and the Crusher. What did that feel like? And he's telling me stories about, he said Dick the Bruiser's got him in the corner, and he's giving him rights, but he goes, every time he goes in, Bruiser's going rat-a-tat-tat, rat-a-tat-tat loud, and it was just a freaking hilarious story. Adnan El Casey, his kid is jacked up, right? I've seen his kid on Facebook. I don't know what his name is, but he's it reminded me of watching now. Steiner's kid Bronson got drafted by the Ravens, and there was pictures all over the wrestling sites. Another, I think he's a fullback, but they both look like power lifters to me.
Oh wow!
So being in the ring with Von Raschke and Adnan Al-Kaisi, any other like kind of AWA? I'm sorry, I dig at the AWA all the time because, but being in Minnesota, I'm sure you've been in the ring with a few other guys, perhaps.
I mean, I've done a few shows where Greg Gagne was on the show, and he'd end up, Mitch would be the antagonist, and he'd give him that drop kick and stuff like that. Like, yeah, so I'm just trying to think of like other moments. I'm sure there was. I'm just, my mind after all these years sometimes, gets a little rattled up and mixed up. I have to have, I'd be in the car with Connor sometimes, and he'd remember stuff from FCW, and I'd be like, what? Like, it's hard to remember. Plus, like, I'll see if things pop up with just us from WWE and doing shows. I think something popped up from like years back where it was like the Wyatts versus Jericho and the Usos, and I was like, we were in Australia? What's going on? I don't remember that. The only way I remembered is it like showed up in my feed, and I was like, oh, okay. I don't remember.
Yeah, well, let's jump back into Florida. It's Florida Championship Wrestling at the time that you go there. Is that correct?
Yeah, Tom Pritchard was the head trainer at the time.
How much? What that locker room's totally different than on the Indies. I always try to tell people that once you hit in a locker room like that. Who are you in? Is there a class that you're in with, like they kind of do now?
So like it was weird because like under Tom, it was like they had their guys that were just about ready to get to TV, and then they kind of had put everybody else with different teachers and kind of a cycle. Like they'd have with Norman for a little bit, or then they'd bring in like Steamboat was teaching at the time too. So they'd bring in different people to kind of teach different people different things, and a lot of blow up drills, a lot of cold matches in an empty warehouse where basically you just sit and watch people wrestle, and then they'd be like, all right, you right now, just get in the ring, do a match. I haven't stretched. Nope, right now. So I mean, it's a learning process, and it's intimidating when you first get there, and it's like, okay, you and you now, this is your tryout match. It's always intimidating, and but that's what helps people learn, and get better.
Now, are you when you first arrived there? I guess at that time, not just you, but everybody. Are you training? Are you at the facility 5 days a week? And how soon before they're putting you in front of a crowd?
Oh yeah, it was like 5 days a week, and I remember I had matches. I think early on they put me like in one of their FCW. They would do a weekly show. I remember I worked Seth like early on, like in like one of the main events, and they just try to see where people are at and see what see. Then they ask you questions about the match afterwards. Say, well, why'd you do this or why'd you do that? And, or hey, don't do this, because of this. So there was a lot to unlearn from like bad habits. Because I remember like one habit I had on the Indies when I covered somebody, it's just very nonchalant covers, and I wasn't really making it look like I was making effort to actually win matches. Or why am I always covering people if you're always going to kick out of my stuff? There's just simple psychology things where even if I'm giving you a move and I do cover you once, I can tell my opponent, hey, sell to this corner. That way I can tell the ref what I'm going to do to him next. Or he can tell the ref what he wants to do to me. So the crowd doesn't need to see us talking, but we can communicate where it looks like it's all working together without having to call out spot versus spot versus spot versus spot. If you get lost with one spot or somebody gets, like hit in the head and doesn't remember, which we didn't always stop matches back then, which I'm glad they do now. But like, it just helps keep everybody safe and on the same page.
When they come to you guys with the Wyatt family storyline idea, does that sound cool to you right away, or you had to be kind of talked into it, or are you just like, hey, whatever you guys want me to do, whatever I need to do? I mean, because that was when I first started really hearing about it, was people were chattering about that.
Yeah, everything was weird the way it happened. Like, I was doing like a Viking gimmick, which I was told would never work in a million years. It's 280s. I'm just doing promos to pop the boys. Well, if they're smiling and laughing, wouldn't the fans at home be smiling and laughing? Uh, so I was told to kind of go in a different direction, but not given any kind of like, try this or try that, try different characters, whatever. Wyndham was doing, going from the Husky Harris character. He would just start it, like he did something called Axel Mulligan, which was like a guy who looks like Jason, covered his entire mask. Kind of similar to The Fiend, but you know, obviously the presentation wasn't there, which is why it didn't work. And then he mirrored into the Bray Wyatt character. They remember they shot vignettes of it, but I was still doing the Viking thing. I had tagged with a guy out there named Bronson, who was, you know, a really good guy, who just, his back kind of gave out with all the bad drills we ended up doing later on. That's a whole other story, with some of these unnecessary drills they would do after the Dr. Tom regime into the Bill DeMont era. But that's a whole different story. But then I saw they did this vignette, and it was really cool what they were doing. They had Brody's being like the first son. He debuted on TV. They still didn't have any kind of plan for me. I did promos with them where I tried different things. I think Bray had given me a bunch of different masks. I tried one with the sheet mask. Dusty hated it. Like, he wants to see my face because he said, this is ugly. This is money. Which, you know, I took offense to. I got a wife. She thinks I'm beautiful. But, you know, so I had the lamb mask. I tried a pig mask. There was a clown mask. There was a full clear mask that I cut off that just was clear up here, but like painted a little bit. And I wore pajamas. Like, I tried different things. I was like a little kid. I was just doing different things during the promos, kind of with the Wyatt family, but on my own too. And I didn't really know what they wanted. They weren't telling me anything about being in the Wyatt family. Then all of a sudden I was told, like the week of an NXT taping, hey, you're going to be the second son of the Wyatts. I had a match with Oliver Gray. Like, it ended up being like a squash match. And I didn't care about the match. All I cared about was, okay, well, we're going to have to do this, this, and this. Well, okay. They're like, we want your character to be like like you're like OCD. I'm like, oh, okay. So they're like telling me what to do. And I'm like, okay, well, what am I going to wear? All I got is all these Viking trunks, you know, with like the Valknot, which is basically just Undisputed Era's design. It's the Valknot, the Death of the Slain. It's Odin's symbol. And so I got like that. I have another pair of trunks that's maroon with like the triple horn of Odin. I got, you know, I could wear jeans, but Brody was wearing jeans when he debuted with the flannel, which is what he was doing on the Indies before with the trucker gimmick. And I'm like, well, what the hell am I going to wear? And I did a reality show in Norway right before I got called up to the road. And one of the challenges, because it was like an amazing race, was to work on a farm. Well, they gave me a jumpsuit. It was long sleeved, like had reflective banding up here. It barely fit me. So I was like, well, what if I cut the sleeves off of this? Does this work? Oh, that'll be fine. And that's how the coveralls were born. So it's like, so then I wrestled with that. And I remember it would ripped all the time. I'd be in the back sewing. We'd like do 4 matches during a 5, you know, taping schedule in one night at Full Sail. So in between, I'd be trying to sew, and I'm a terrible sewer. So every freaking match, I'd have to sew again. We didn't have seamstress at that time. So that's kind of how the original like look came together. And then eventually I just stopped doing the counting thing when I got on the road because I just didn't like it. It didn't feel natural. And then finally we said, okay, well, Bray's going on the road. You guys aren't. We were told that from Bill DeMott. And then we're just like, okay. And then like a week later, oh, wait, no, you guys are going to film vignettes too. But we don't think you're going to go on the road. And we're like, then why are we filming vignettes? And then Bray was like, oh, no, you guys are going to go on the road. You guys are going on the road. We know it. It has to be a group. And then we go to film the vignettes. I think it was with the different people filming it instead of not the NXT people that we're used to, but different people from the road, Chris Chambers, stuff like that. And when we got there, in the trunk of the car, I had the lamb mask still. I kept it for like 5 months. I took it out. And I go up to Chris Chambers and I'm like, can we use this? And I put it on during the vignettes. They used it. So it's just the magic of me keeping stuff. I'm a hoarder. I keep shit around, and you never know when you're going to use it. So
I
it's
just
just
remember.
a thing with stuff magically falling into place. And that's kind of like, everything in my career, stuff just magically falls into place. I mean, if you look at any kind of run I had in the company, it's because something magically fell into place. It's not because somebody had a plan for me, but because something used me.
We might have broke up there for a minute. Yeah, I remember that mask specifically, and I remember I don't think I had the network at the time, but there was some buzz about you guys down there, and I remember calling a friend, and he goes, "Yeah, this Wyatt Family thing is pretty darn cool." And it seemed to me, and not that my memory is the best on it too, but it seemed you guys were doing your stuff at NXT, and it was not too long before you're on the main roster. Am I right on that?
No, I think one of the happiest days of me and Harper's career up there was the day we gave the NXT belts up, the day we lost them. And then we knew, hey, we don't need to come back here.
What can we back up? Because I was gonna ask and I forgot because I'm such a good journalist, but the Norwegian reality show. I see that's on YouTube. I kind of looked it up. How was that experience?
Oh, it was awesome. So my great grandfather came from Norway, and on my mom's side, everyone came from Sweden and Norway too. And I had never been there at the time, and they were doing a show, and WCCO, which is one of the major news outlets out here, was putting on an open casting call for, hey, if you have Norwegian heritage and you want to win 50 grand, well, here I am, a struggling wrestler with a kid, a single dad. And I'm like, I want that money, and then win 50 grand and meet your Norwegian family. So obviously you have families still out there, and I'm like, oh, that sounds awesome. So 10 people from the USA who had never been to Norway but had been emigrated by like a year go out to do like an amazing race the whole country up and down for a 10-episode stint. I was gone for about 3 months. They paid for all the travel, all the food. The only downside is that I couldn't talk to anybody back home. No phone calls, nothing. Only communication was through an email. And I had to have the production read the emails so that there was no spoilers. But yeah, we filmed that, and it was an awesome experience because, you're going back to a country where your ancestors came from, where your family came from. They came to the U.S. to give me an opportunity to do everything that I get to do right now, even just doing this podcast. Like, they gave up so much to come. They sacrificed not knowing what was next, and I can go back to like when this whole COVID thing started and I got released. It's like, I don't know what's next, but I'm going to have to fight my ass off for whatever I get. And that's always been how I've always approached everything in life because of that. I think about, my family that came out here with nothing and how hard they had to fight to make something. So the thought of a little bump in the road for me, that's nothing compared to what they had to do. So just going there and experiencing that show, it changed me as a person, and it changed how I want to live my life.
I mean, that has to feel great to be in your quote unquote home country. Just kind of connecting to the places and everything, and it's beautiful. I watched a little bit of it. And like I said, it's all available, whether that's legal or not, on YouTube. So it was kind of cool to catch up. So something for people to look at. Super cool thing. So you guys
I was going to say, plus one of the favorite moments of my career in WWE was last year. We did a tour of Finland, Sweden, and Norway, and this was WWE's first show ever in Norway, and I got to be a part of that. And I was a heel with Daniel at the time. We had the belts, and just the reception I got from the fans of Norway, it meant so much to me because, the company had no idea, that they would react the way they did to me. But there were chants for the television show. And I did the show in 2010. This is 2019, and there's still loud chants across the arena for that television show, which is what that TV show meant to the people that lived in that country. It was a primetime show, So just to have the reception from the crowd, and Daniel's great, we just finish, let me go over. He was going to go over, but he tagged me in and let me do my finish. Poor Rusev had to take that iron claw slam. But yeah, it was definitely an experience. We changed the match a little bit on the fly. We did a three-way where I got to be the babyface of the match. But yeah, it was great. It was unbelievable to just be part of history with the company. Even if they didn't know, the company didn't know. It's kind of just one of those fun mistakes in life where they're like, oh, okay. He must be over in the Scandinavian countries.
That's pretty cool. Did you do any like meet and greets when you were over there, or did those turn out really well for you, or did you guys?
We didn't have time for meet and greets in Norway. I did them in Finland and Sweden, and we didn't spend a night in Norway. We're just in and out a day. I think I met up with the creators of the show when I was out there, which was fun to sit and chat with them for a bit. But I remember that tour was really fun because Finland and Sweden, I went and saw a Winter Sun show after my match. I left. I took a cab. I went straight to a club, and I saw Winter Sun play a 10th anniversary of their debut album in full. I caught the whole gig, and then I ended up going to the next night. I went and saw Battle Beast in Sweden. Caught the tail end of that show. But it was like really cool because it's like, I felt at home. I didn't go with anybody, just myself, and purchased some liquids. But it was fun because I went to the Winter Sun show, and it's such a small world. We were in Finland, and Daniel from Children of Autumn was actually at the show in Finland. So he actually came out after that show and met up with me at the Winter Sun show. So it's just like small world. You could be anywhere in the world. And you just try to appreciate what you got because you never know when it's gone, So that was one thing I always try to do is like when I'm on the road, I try to experience it. Even if I'm on my own, just try to experience some fun. You can always find fun. You don't need to always find trouble. You can find some fun.
Trouble finds you sometimes. I've learned that. Not you in particular, but so 3 months doing the reality show in the middle of, were you able to work out? Were you able to do, I'm thinking about you're in the middle of your wrestling training, or you may be like going, hey, I got to concentrate on this show. Are you able to do anything?
That experience was no working out. I think I did push-ups and sit-ups. That was it. One episode, I think I wrestled around with one of the other guys. Like we put on a little mock match at a Viking village in Gutenberg, or Gudvagen was the name of the town. It was a Viking village. But